So the licensee here that's seeking a change of ownership or control is Curaleaf Massachusetts Incorporated. As you alluded to, Mr. Chairman, this does affect 5 provisional adult use licenses and 2 medical marijuana treatment center licenses. The individuals requesting to acquire ownership or control interests over these licenses include the following individuals: Andre Bloch, Boris Jordan, Jonathan Forscher, Carl Johannesson, Peter Derby, Stephen Paterno, and Stuart Wilcox. The entities requesting to acquire ownership or control over these licenses include the following: Curaleaf Incorporated, which is a holding company and 100% owner of Curaleaf Massachusetts Incorporated; Curaleaf Holdings Incorporated, which is a holding company and 100% owner of Curaleaf Incorporated. It is a publicly traded company on the Canadian Stock Exchange, Canadian Securities Exchange. Background checks were conducted on all of these individuals and entities disclosed within the application. No suitability issues were discovered. The individuals and entities that are requesting ownership and control over the licenses do not appear to have exceeded any ownership or control limits over any particular license type or cultivation canopy. Commission staff conducted an organizational and financial inspection into the individuals and entities associated with this change. Commission staff found no issues or inconsistencies with the information provided to the Commission in this application. Commission staff recommend review and decision on this request for change of ownership and control, and if approved, request that the approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Let me open it to my fellow commissioners. Are there questions for the investigative staff or Commissioner Title?
If there was one, what was the explanation given for why this transaction occurred without approval, given that approval is required?
The explanation that was given was that they didn't feel it was an actual change of ownership or control because of the percentages of stocks held by the principals didn't change as a result of this. That was the explanation that was provided.
Additionally, it should be noted that the process for change of ownership, while it's in the regulations for change of ownership and control, change of location, change of name, this process was currently in the process of being developed at that time.
Can you do me a favor? I know that's going to be part of the issue. Can you give me a timeline in terms of when we had updated our process, when we had forms available on the website, when the actual change of control occurred, and when they actually submitted an application? Do you have those dates available?
You got it? We're looking that up right now, sir.
Okay, great. So while they're doing that, are there other questions for the investigative team?
Mr. Chairman, the timeline is as follows. On April 26th and 27th, the marijuana establishment submitted applications for licensure. On October 18th,
Wait a minute, I'm sorry.
and sorry, that's of 2018.
2018, right?
April 2018.
Yep.
On October 18th, 2018, the Commission granted provisional licenses to the marijuana
So
establishment.
these are we talking about the 5? There are two medical and 5 provisional licenses. Those were not all the same date, were they?
Correct. So thank you for the clarification. This pertains to the adult use licenses.
The 5 adult use? Okay, thank you. Keep going.
On October 18th, the Commission granted those adult use licenses. And on October 25th, 2018, the marijuana establishment completed its business combination, which had been in the works during this period of time. There were public filings with the Canadian Securities Exchange, and there were public press reports about that transaction.
Yeah, this is trivial, but I want to just make sure. I am familiar with the Toronto Stock Exchange. Is that different from the Canadian Stock Exchange, in your knowledge?
I'm not familiar with the Toronto Stock Exchange, so
That is the only stock exchange I'm familiar with in the country of Canada, which is relevant. We can, if you look into that offline, just make
Sure.
But keep going. Thank you.
In the documents, the public filings that the investigator reviewed were from Cedar, so let me clarify that's and based on that, it was referred to as the Canadian stock.
I assume it's the same. Toronto is colloquial for Canadian Stock Exchange, but it's not relevant, so keep going. Sorry about that.
So in October 25th, 2018, that business arrangement is completed. At that time, as Mr. Potvin previously articulated, the commission did not have a change of ownership process in place. On, I believe, approximately January 19th or so, that process was approved by the commission. An application went live on the commission's website.
On the 19th of January 2019?
Correct, approximately. I may be a day or two off
Okay,
on
but
that date.
that's fine.
And then likewise, approximately February 9th of 2019, the entity Curaleaf submitted a change of ownership application.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tattle?
I don't have any further questions. Thank you. I do have a comment. Our regulations are very clear that prior to any change in ownership, approval is required. I don't find it persuasive that there was no process or form in place. In my opinion, the analysis can end there. We did just set up a process for a request for reconsideration under certain factors, but I don't see any of those factors in front of me now.
I feel like I need to hear from other commissioners on this, on Commissioner Tattle's point. I'm sorry to put people on the spot, but I feel it's necessary. Go ahead, Commissioner Doyle. Thank you very much, by the way. I appreciate that.
No problem.
I appreciate your bravery.
Yeah. I will admit, I'm very sympathetic to Commissioner Title's point. The regulations were in place last spring. There's nothing that stopped the applicant from sending in documentation requesting approval. You don't need a form necessarily. I would be interested to hear if they requested one and it was denied, or they were told not
Well,
to
actually,
submit it.
that was going to be my question. So if
Yeah.
you don't mind me interrupting and
No, not
asking
at all.
either the executive director or the investigative team, were there any communications prior to their submitting the application on the 9th of February, and particularly before, as you referred to it, Mr. Payer, as the business arrangement was concluded on the 25th of October 2018? Were there any communications that we had with the applicant, or any requests from the applicant that we're aware of? Mr. Beyer?
My recollection is that I found out about the proposed change and contacted the company. And
When was this, approximately?
November of 2018.
Okay.
And the reaction was that they didn't feel they did anything wrong at that time. But they made no attempt to contact my staff or myself to notify us ahead of time. I found out on my own.
And Chair.
Yes,
may I add, while
Mr.
I know that while this matter has been.
Can you
there
speak
has
up,
been-
please?
I-
Yeah?
Is it not working?
Yeah, no, you just need to be a little closer to the
Okay.
microphone, that's all.
Sorry, Chair. I know while there has been discussions that they may have communicated with, members of the commission staff, I think was really important. I think that the commission is kind of stating is that there was no formal request for a form. And I think that's, the point I want to make. So while there may be discussions or people stating that there were discussions between commission staff and the entity or officials from the entity, there was no, to my knowledge, there was no formal request for a form so I think that's a critical piece.
Did
So,
we, yes, Commissioner Flanagan?
So what all of you are basically saying is that we found out about it and went to them. They didn't come to us.
That's my recollection, Commissioner, yes.
Are you thinking about saying something, Mr. Executive Director? Not to put you on the spot any more than I've just put the rest of the commissioners on the spot.
I think to the enforcement team's point, what is from a process, from just purely a process standpoint, that team as well as myself have many conversations throughout the course of any day with any applicants, and there are circumstances where applicants or licensees will reach out and inquire as to process, inquire as to forms. Similarly, they will inform us of their interpretations of things as well. And,
Sure.
so I think it's important to, I would caveat any declaration of requests with a distinction that there are conversations occurring on a regular basis, either through inspections as well as in the course of just the daily kind of conducting of business at the commission. That said, to Mr. Payer's point, forms were made available at a certain date. This applicant has in fact applied. Similarly, the commission issued a notice of deficiencies to the licensee.
Yeah, I'm sorry, say that again, please, Mr.
The commission issued a notice of deficiency.
When was that?
It would have been within the past month or so.
June 21st.
That is largely to facilitate this conversation today, to make it clear that it is not, that the notice of deficiencies was issued. The plan of correction is that they've applied for a change of ownership.
Right.
So
Okay.
it is an attempt on the licensee's part to come into compliance.
So I need legal perspective on this, and this is hypothetical, but if this transaction has already occurred, which it sounds like it has, and if we were to deny the change of control request, what is the legal status of this business?
Yeah, so the entity, from my perspective, would still be licensed. So the licensing enforcement staff would have to exercise its discretion to take action against that license, for example, seeking to revoke the license.
But who holds, you say the business would still be licensed. Who holds that license, in your legal opinion?
So my understanding, the entity would still have.
Which entity? The original entity, or the original entity doesn't exist anymore, is that correct?
The entity which we've approved as having a provisional license.
But that entity doesn't exist, is my question. Keep going, sorry.
Would still hold a provisional license.
Right.
In other words, this is not, the commission, before the commission right now is not a decision on its licensure status, but
Mhm.
rather a decision on the change of ownership.
I understand that.
More process to be had.
In your understanding of the transaction, does the original entity that we issued the license to, does that entity still exist, just a subsidiary of other companies at this point? Mr. Fair, do you know, do you have an opinion on that?
Yes, in the change of ownership report, there is a comparison of the entity structure. And I'm just pulling that up now, but I believe it's after the main narrative. I think I just closed it, but I have it here. So this is this is Exhibit A. And Exhibit A indicates that Curaleaf, Massachusetts, after the business combination, its parent company would be Curaleaf, Inc., and Paliatech, Massachusetts, Incorporated, with PT Mass Holdings being subject to the exchange of shares as part of the business combination. So the entities that previously held, or at least one of the entities that was disclosed on the application, or one of the individuals, Mr. Boris Jordan, his interest is now a portion of the
As a
subordinate
subsidiary.
voting shares.
To answer your question
Yes,
more
sir.
directly, Mr. Chairman, Curaleaf, Massachusetts Incorporated would still hold the license. That entity still
And it's
exists.
still an existing entity?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Anything else? I'm sorry, anything else, General Counsel? Thank you. Commissioner Bryant, do you want some more time? Do you have something to say on this subject? Okay. So I would appreciate the General Counsel, again, I'm sorry to keep putting you on the spot here. If you could help me understand our options here, one of which clearly is to not vote on this, I believe, at this point. Second would be to take a vote on the request for change of ownership. And let me just then go down the branch. If we were to approve, do we have any ability to take any actions based upon their application or their consummating the deal prior to our approval? I mean, do we have the right to do an investigation and take any kind of administrative action against that if we do improve the change of control? What I'm saying is that if we collectively agree that there was a violation here, if we were to take a vote and if we were to approve change of control, and those are all very hypothetical, does that allow us to take administrative action in terms of a fine or penalty or anything with respect to the fact that they consummated the transaction without our approval?
Yes.
Okay. So again, to just go down this decision tree, if you could help me, we could choose not to vote today. We could vote and approve, which does not, eliminate our ability to take administrative action. We could deny.
Yes.
If we deny the change of control, based upon other actions that we've taken somewhere in the past, they have the right to petition or to litigate?
Yes, so they could challenge that decision.
Right.
It's my view of the regulations that they could challenge that decision to
Mm-hmm.
we can make arguments in here for as to the validity of that moving in that direction. And as I pointed out to you, this is not an action on the license itself.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, we would go through using the normal administrative process
Mm-hmm.
in terms of our licensing enforcement staff.
I think they want to.
Exercising its discretion as to any enforcement actions, and that would go through our normal administrative process.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I've also, and I will not mention anybody by name, but other commissioners have said they'd like more time just to digest the amount of material here. So one option we do have is to defer this issue until our next meeting. I believe that we should take action today if we feel comfortable we can. I don't think deferring is necessarily a good thing, but if it's necessary, I will support it. Go ahead, Commissioner McBride.
I have questions about the status of the licensee and also under the purported change that I would like to discuss, and I'm happy to do it now with General Counsel and licensing.
Yep.
I would like to be able to do that. I can do it now with them,
Mhm.
or if we want to defer this
Yeah.
to a later date, I can have that conversation. But I do have some questions right now.
I guess my suggestion would be, based upon General Counsel's answer about the status of the license, is given that, at least one other commissioner has said they have questions and would like more time to go through this. Commissioner McBride's comment that she has questions that she would like to discuss with General Counsel and our investigative team. Given that, the transaction occurred months ago, my belief is let us take the 2 weeks between, or the 3 weeks between now and our next meeting on August 8th, and allow each of the commissioners to do whatever they think is necessary in terms of diving into this more deeply, and let's put it on the agenda for the 8th of August. Hopefully everybody that knows me well enough to know that I don't dodge difficult issues, and I'm not just doing this to kick the can down the road, but I do think just given the state of where we're at in the individual perspectives of the commissioners, I actually think it would be beneficial for all sides to defer the conversation and vote on this until the 8th of August. Would anybody argue or have concern if that's the decision we reached today? Commissioner Flanagan?
I mean, unless there's serious issues or concerns, I don't see why we can't have the conversation now.
I just, as I said, that partly is Commissioner McBride saying that she wanted to have that conversation, but I said I've also heard from other commissioner, and other commissioner, they want more time, they need more time. And so I think, I don't see, as I said, I don't want to kick a can down the road. I don't want to defer difficult conversations just for the sake of deferral. I just think it would be beneficial for us to do that. I think we could go ahead today, but I know at least one commissioner that has requested that we not consider it today. Commissioner Title, go ahead.
I'm the anonymous commissioner.
I was trying, but my point is, first of all, thank you for stepping up, but it doesn't matter who it was. It really doesn't matter who it was.
I kind of see it as two decisions, whether we should consider it at all, and then the actual decision if we do consider it. So I'm ready for the first, but not the
We
second.
spoke about that earlier this morning. I actually, that's another alternative, which is not just to say we'll come back to this on the 8th, but if you want to make a specific motion about what you feel comfortable that we can vote on today, which is whether to consider this or not, and then come back on the 8th to actually have that consideration.
I would like more discussion before I
Sure.
start making that motion.
So would you, once you, to me, there's two issues here, and if I could pick up from where you just left off, and I might or might not be analyzing this correctly, but at least in my analysis, there are two issues here, and they're both important. One issue is because this company consummated the transaction without our approval, is that sufficient to say we're not even going to consider the change of control because of that? Then the second question is if we say, no, we will consider the change of control, then to have the conversation about the change of control. And that one, I believe, does have to be deferred. But I think there are two questions, which is, do we want to even consider the change of control, given the violation? Now, that, again, might not be the right way to do it, but I'm trying to parse a way that we don't just punt the ball down the road, but give ourselves enough time to do this right. So I'm open-minded. In case it's not obvious, I'm open-minded to other suggestions in terms of process and timing. Commissioner McBride, thank you for jumping in.
I don't know how to answer that question except to say that I think that you're raising some points that are relevant for us to be us royally, or us meaning, I think, licensing and enforcement, perhaps in conjunction with general counsel, to be giving some further consideration to. Just as I'm looking at this and sort of hearing these perspectives and looking at the regulations, I'm sort of identifying some other things that
Right.
maybe should be a, conversation among folks who are on our staff and who we task to
Yep.
look at issues before we even get to the question of whether to move forward
Yep.
with this.
I-
So I don't know how to answer the question about, that to me suggests that it's
We-
not ripe today.
It's not right. Okay, thank you. That reinforces my perspective. I'd like to hear from the other commissioners. My proposal on the table right now, which I think is reinforced by Commissioner McBride, which I appreciate, is that we defer conversation. We have very explicit, and perhaps we should get to very explicit next steps that will occur between now and the 8th. And so it's clear what we're asking the staff to do, but to defer the conversation until the 8th, but make sure that we take the appropriate steps to ensure that we are able and ready to have the conversation on the 8th.
Can we recess for one?
Yeah, sure. Sure. So we'll just recess for 5 minutes.
Jen, just bear with me for 1 second.
Pardon?